Dennis, you played in a fairly successful era with Rovers at the back end of the 50s.
Yeah.
How would you compare the two teams?
There's absolutely no comparison at all. Rovers were a team of, I think there was only 2 drinkers in the team, even though I didn't drink then. But the social was, there wasn't a lot of social life in the team itself.
Yep.
I can only ever remember going to one do they had after winning a premiership, and it was out of Bernie Newton's, and they said grace before we had dinner, and it didn't, you know, I didn't feel as though it was anything special.
Yep.
But the moment you start playing for Ramblers, everybody backed everybody else up. Everybody were friends. Everybody went to the same parties and.
1961, I think you were part of that first Ramblers team, is that right?
No.
Oh, it's in the records, you were.
Oh,
In fact, you scored 146 runs for the year, so, you know, you weren't like a superstar, but you were there. It's in the records.
So Ross Fitzgerald, along with brother Laurie, they were in the first ever Ramblers cricket team, 1961-62 season. Ross Fitzgerald, 11 innings, high score 42, and they were at 104.
I played for Ramblers, yeah.
Good bunch?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Butch was a bit of a player?
Oh yes, he was quite keen.
Yeah, so he's one of the
Originals.
One of the originals. Yeah, and we're thankful for the likes of him and his brother and various others that got the club started.
Fantastic.
Because we're still going today.
Perfect. You did that well.
You played approximately 14 seasons for the club. You were captain for one of those years, along with being the club president for 11 years. So you invested a fair bit of time with the club. You won or played in 3 premierships in 62, 63, 64, 65 and 71, 72. Any recollections of those grand finals and the celebrations afterwards?
Well, many of those times, my cricket enthusiasm was very, very high, and I just wanted to be amongst that group of players playing out there, whether we were batting, bowling, fielding. I just loved to be there. And I can remember skipping, going out to field on a bad hot day. I'm in the game.
You're so excited to be
Skipping.
playing.
I was so pleased to be playing.
And what's a man to think of your mania for statistics?
Well, it's lucky that she's a sporty person herself.
It is lucky.
Well, with anybody else, the probably relationship wouldn't last. She's not so much into the history of the game as like I am, but she
probably has said, yes, that's Steve, probably once or twice.
Yeah, she appreciates my love of sport and tolerates it.
Yeah. So where are we? What are we looking at, Steve?
We're at the Cockalichi Oval, picturesque oval it is, standing outside the Cockalichi Cricket Club shed, better known as Peewee's Pavilion. Great place to play cricket, and I'm sure there would be plenty of drinks on a hot day had here. Of course, Peewee's Pavilion named after or in honour of Neil Peewee Richardson, who was a local farmer here and a sporting legend. Peewee unfortunately lost his life in the 2005 bushfires that started in the Coffin Bay National Park and swept through this district through Yallinla Flat. And of course, Peewee was a volunteer firefighter and unfortunately lost his life fighting that fire. So, yeah.
But he was a great Cockalichi man.
He was a great Cockalichi man. And
as Butch Fitzgerald was for a brief time. You're going to have to fill in as well.
Yep, yeah, Butch, of course, he started his cricket career here as a kid. And I think the Cockalichi Cricket Club formed in about 1937, so he would have been one of the first players till such time as he moved the district and took up farming in Butler. and just on Peewee too, he got a bit of a link to the Tumby Bay Football Club. He was a former Sturt player. He played a bit of reserves football for Sturt, and when he come back, recommenced his footy with Cummins Ramblers, and then he was enticed to come and coach Tumby in the mid-70s, probably through his relationship with brother-in-law Bill Oswald and some influence there through Roger Dunn and like that got him over there, and he coached for a couple of years, which was and played, of course.
He played cricket?
Not for Ramblers Cricket Club. He remained with the Cockalichi Cricket Club. Yeah, so a bit of a link there through Peewee's involvement with the footy club. So yeah.
Now, on Butch, of course, he went from here to...
He went to Butler, take up farming there, but he played for Ungarra. Butler, I don't think, had a cricket team at that stage. Well, they were in recess, so he played for Ungarra, which is the nearest cricketing team. And later on, when the Ramblers Cricket Club was formed, Tumby Ramblers, he started playing for them, which was in 1961, up until he retired in the mid-70s after he was struck by a cricket ball.
And of course, just while we're on the subject, of course, Doug was one of the very first players for Ramblers.
Doug Young, yes. All right, Doug, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Yeah.
Doug, you played your first game for the Ramblers Cricket Club in their very first season. It was against Port Neale at Port Neale on March the 3rd, 1962. It wasn't a great start, with Ramblers being comprehensively beaten by the home team, and you scoring just 9 runs after being run out. You did, however, manage to take 2 wickets for 1 run. One of those wickets was Bill Davey, the father of the great Bob Davey, whom we will talk about later. I want to start by asking you firstly how you became a Rambler cricketer, because I believe it's an interesting story.
Yes, it is indeed. I was never supposed to play for Ramblers. In fact, my elder brother Keith played with a guy named Doug Murphy up at Nungicommata, and Keith said, "Well, you're going to Tumby Bay." He said, "Look up Doug Murphy." He said, "Play cricket with him." I didn't realise at the time that there were more than one team in Tumby Bay. I just thought the Tumby Bay Cricket Club was it. A guy named Alan Edwards, who ran the merchandising side and of Southern Farmers, where I was a livestock officer. I walked into the office and he said, "You're playing for Ramblers Cricket Club?" And I said, "Oh, that's fine. Yes, good. Not a problem." Only to find out that there were 3 teams in Tumby Bay, and Rovers, Ramblers, but I'd committed to Ramblers, and that was it. So I became a Rambler. But that first day at Port Neale, my wife, who of less than a month, I had three guys knocking on the back door and saying, "Oh, you've got to play cricket for the Ramblers, otherwise you won't qualify for the final." And I looked at my wife, who was standing. We were laying linoleum at the time in our flat, and I said, "Well, do you know where my cricket clothes are?" And she said, looked at me rather sternly and said, "Your mother packed your case. You'll have to find them." So I did. We've eventually found my cricket gear, you know. And I left my new bride holding a roll of lino while I went and played cricket for the Ramblers that would have been the 3rd of March, 1962. 1962. Yeah.
Something your wife would have had to have gotten used to, being a talented sportsman that you were. She would have had to put up with a lot of that.
Well, I think I got home a bit late that night too, because I went with the Fitzgerald boys, and they used to like to stay for a beer after the.
They were very social.
After the game in the Port Neale Hotel, who was at that stage owned by Joe Kinlow, former West Torrens coach.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe Kinlow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, you've started with Ramblers. You come up against Port Neale again in the semi-final, played at Lipson, and you fare a little better this time with the bat, at least scoring 68 not out, and in fact carrying your bat as you watched all 10 Rambler wickets fall around you. Ramblers are dismissed for 158, well short of Port Neale's mammoth first innings total of 4 for 309. 206 of those runs were scored by Robert Davey. Can you tell me a little bit about Bob?
I can indeed. Probably the hardest hitter of a ball that I had encountered in all my cricket career. Before the game, Bob Carr was our captain, and he threw me the new ball and said, "Want you to open the bowling?" And Bob Davey was about. I said, "Well, you tell me about Bob Davey." He said, "All Bob Carr said was, 'You'll find out.'" And I thought, "Oh, that's rather ominous." So I asked Butch Fitzgerald. Butch was my eyes and ears of the Ramblers Cricket Club, and he knew most of the players. And he said, "Well, Doug," he said, "he'll hit your worst ball for 6, but he said he'll probably hit your best ball for 4 only." But anyway,
It's reassuring.
but let me just add to that at one stage there, I don't know who was bowling, but Dr. David Wibley was fielding it just in the gully, and Bob slashed this ball and it went straight to David Wibley, and David put his hands out and then took his hands away, and the ball sped through for 4 runs. And he turned around to me and he said, "I'm operating tomorrow." You know, so
They need their fingers.
so we had our chances against Bob, but we couldn't take the catches because he hit the ball so hard. It was a brilliant innings.
Yes, a very outstanding cricketer he was.
He was indeed. Yeah, as were his brothers.
Yes.
Ross and Don, and in fact their father Bill.
Yep.
All 4 played for Port Neale when I first. And Max Horn was their captain, and yeah, they were a strong side.
Yeah. In season 62-63, you were appointed captain of Ramblers, and with the addition of 2 very experienced and talented cricketers in Brian Pryor and Barry Hendrickson, you lead the team all the way to the grand final against the very strong Lipson team that boasted the likes of Tom Morris, Ken Bailey and Les Hurst. But you bundled them out for a mere 108, with only Les Hurst showing any resistance with 64 not out. In reply, you get the required runs 4 wickets down, and with yourself being there at the end, 43 not out. Any recollections of that game or the celebrations that followed?
Yes, I have some very wonderful recollections of that game. Brian Pryor, in fact, came to me when Les Hurst gave us a bit of trouble. A very stubborn batsman and a very good batsman. And Brian Pryor said, "He can't bat both ends." He said, "Let's try and tie him down." And so Brian came on to bowl. He bowled quickish off breaks, and he tied Les up whilst we attacked the other end, and it worked because Les remained not out 64 of that total, but we were able to get them out from the other end. And the other, when we were batting, I was on strike, and Ken Bailey was bowling, and Ken bowled this ball at me, and I was not sure what to do with it, so I just slashed at it, and I hit it very, very hard, and it went straight back to Ken, and I thought, oh, caught and ball. But it went through his hands, hit him on the shoulder, and ricocheted off, and we took a run. And I went back and I said, "Ken, I expect you to take that." And he collapsed in my arms.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And fortunately, again, David Wibley was there, and he had a chronic asthma attack. They took Ken to hospital, and anyway, we won the game quite comfortably. Yes. And I went and saw Ken after the game, and he congratulated me and congratulated the team on a good win. And he was in hospital for 3 or 4 days. But
yeah, you mentioned that Ken's health, and we were talking about it yesterday, that Ken actually had to forego a tour to England that Frank Richardson went on with a South Australian country team due to his doctor saying that you best not go because of your health to England, and it would have been a boat trip back then. So yeah, that's interesting to hear that. The following year, the club picked up the service of 2 more outstanding cricketers in Gary Casbolt and Graham Baum. In addition to this, Lloyd Bennett, who played the last couple of games the previous season. Unfortunately, Lipson get revenge for last year's grand final loss by eliminating Ramblers from the finals with a 24-run 24-run win in the semi-final. You, Doug, have a great captain's game, scoring 80 runs and capturing 3 Lipson wickets. And although you would have been disappointed with how the season ended, from a personal point of view, you had a great season with both bat and ball, taking 25 wickets at 8.3 apiece and scoring your first ton for Ramblers. It was 106 versus Port Newell. You shared a 199-run partnership with Gary Casbolt, who scored 107, a record 3rd wicket partnership that stood for nearly 33 years. So well done. And what was your recollections of
I can remember that innings with Gary. Gary Casbolt was a very correct player. Always straight bat. But I don't recall it being a record. Of course, I don't know who was keeping the books in those days. But for it to have stood for such a long years makes me feel
very good. The following season, the club stocks were boosted even further with the arrival of cricketers such as Neville Brown, John Semler and Jeff Phillips, which gave the side tremendous depth. Casbolt with 495 runs and Bennett with 604 were both prolific with the bat. Casbolt batted all day against Lipson when he recorded the club's highest ever score of 193. I believe you were playing in that game, and it was a very warm day.
hot, very hot day, yes. And Gary batted. Gary wasn't the fittest man. He was a little like myself, a bit overweight, and he shed a few pounds that day, I can assure you, running up and down that pitch.
And of course back then it was 2-day matches, so he would have batted for the entirety of the day, so he would have been very tired that night. Ramblers gained a relatively easy passage into the grand final after defeating Rovers in the semi-final. The first innings win was set up by Bennett and Baum, who put on 157 runs for the first wicket. Score was Ramblers 5 for 221, and Rovers were all out for 115. The grand final against Tumby Colts turned out to be a comfortable win in the end, with the main contributors being Neville Brown with 52 runs and yourself, Doug, with 5 for 19 of 14.2 overs. So that's a good win, the grand final.
Yes.
Your second as captain.
Yes, I remember the game because a lot of my friends were playing for Colts, like Kenny Berryman and John Lodge, who we played a lot of football together with.
Yes.
Vin Pedler was a good friend, and yeah, we were lucky that day. We got them out for 114, and I didn't fare so well with the bat that day. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at the scorecard here. Corton bowled M weightless, Chaffee weight for 0.
Oh.
A duck. I don't know that it was a golden duck.
But you certainly made up with it with the ball.
But
So.
I had a bit of luck with the ball.
Well played.
Yes.
Any celebrations that night, or was it pretty low key back in the day?
Yeah, it was fairly low key. I guess we probably had a few drinks afterwards at the hotel.
It was more celebrated.
Every year we had an annual
Dinner.
end of season dinner.
Yeah.
And of course the premiership went with it was a bonus.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. You relinquished the captaincy the following year, but played a further 3 seasons for Ramblers, including the 66-67 grand final loss to Rovers, when Ramblers were dismissed for only 49 runs. The newspaper article from the day mentions the unavailability of both Baum and Casbolt for the grand final, and the fact that Lloyd Bennett had been flown back from Kangaroo Island to play in the final. Can you enlighten me on the circumstances surrounding these players?
No,
some mystery around it. That
I was hoping you wouldn't bring this one up because we were dismissed for 49. I think I contributed 2. It was a disastrous day. Neville Brown bowled short and quick, and Lyle Swaffer hit them further and harder. It was just a disastrous day, but the unavailability of Casbolt and Baum mystifies me. I have spoken to Gary Casbolt about this, and he said he couldn't understand why he was unavailable.
But it's certainly a loss to the team
Perhaps
because
they had transfers in their jobs. They were both in the bank.
yeah,
Graham in the Bank of Adelaide and Gary Casbolt in the State Bank.
yep. But certainly two key players to lose the grand final.
Absolutely, absolutely. But to be dismissed as 49 was pretty disgraceful, really.
But that has been topped in a little bit further down the track in a game that Tom Tierney played that we'll talk about later when the Ramblers were all out for 33.
Oh, sounds like the Indian score of 36 just recently.
Exactly. The 1967-68 season would be your last with the club. In fact, your last game would be against Colts in late November 1967. You scored 53 runs and took 4 for 19. Your career with Ramblers would read 1,218 runs at 22.98 with 2 centuries and 159 wickets at 10.35, with best bowling figures of 7 for 20, and on 10 occasions you took 5 or more wickets in an innings. That bowling average, by the way, remains the best per wicket for any bowler who has taken more than 100 wickets for the club. So that's a great record, Doug.
Thank you.
In 2011, you were named Ramblers vice-captain in the 50-year team, a great honour, no doubt.
Yes, I was very proud of that.
Yep. Also named in that team was Lloyd Bennetts, along with John Williams, Dennis Chappell, Cliff Carpenter, Dean Dunn and David Fitzgerald, all of whom you played some cricket with. So that would have been a bit of a, just shows how strong that era was for the Ramblers Cricket Club to have so many people named in that team.
Lloyd was a great little cricketer. His first game was probably most memorable in the fact that Ken Bailey pulled a man-cad on him.
Okay.
And he said, I said, that was a bit unsporting, Ken. And he said, if he dressed correctly, I wouldn't have worried because Lloyd came out in khaki shorts.
Yep, I've heard that.
Batted in khaki shorts, and Ken didn't like that much at all. But he pulled a man-cat on him and ran him out.
And also you played a little bit of cricket with Dean Dunn, who was just starting. He due to work commitments, he didn't start his career till he's 35, but he certainly made up for lost time.
Yeah, Dean actually played in the 62-63 grand final and took a wicket. He was a spinner, but we never at that stage just realised how good a spinner Dean was, and he couldn't play on a regular basis because of work commitments in the hotel industry, and because of that, he didn't play a lot of games whilst I was there. But I think he made up for it afterwards.
Most definitely.
Yes. But yes, but there were certainly some characters during that time that I played, that we played against, and.
What about some of the better cricketers that you played against? Some of the opposition players, whether it be at club level or association level.
Oh, well, at club level, of course, the Rovers, Frank Richardson, even though he was at the end of his cricketing career, was a very good bat. But that brings us to another story about Butch Fitzgerald. That I asked Butch about Frank, and Butch very quietly said he tends to lift his on drives. And I said, all right. I said, well, you go and field at mid-on or wherever you reckon Frank might hit the ball. And he said, all right. So, and I got a ball to jag back, and Frank lifted it straight to Butch Fitzgerald. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Out.
Good to have that sort of intel on a player when you're
yeah.
club. Obviously, Bob Davey would be another one that.
Bob would have to rate as a number one.
Yep.
Doug Murphy.
Yes. Who should have been a teammate of yours.
Should have been a teammate. Yeah, probably the best captain that I played against.
Right.
Yeah, Ross Davey as an opening bowler. Leon Cameron,
Yes.
Lipson, Les Hurst, Ken Bailey, of course. They could have almost had a team of Baileys out there. There was Rex and Ken and Mott and
Jeff.
Jeff, and in the later days, Merv Bailey, no, Mott's son,
Don.
Oh, Don.
Donald, yeah, that's right. He was at college when we were playing, and he came home for a couple of times. And
He was a young talent.
he was. We had a little incident one day playing Lipson where I don't know. I think Neville Brown was bowling, and the ball hit Donald on the pads, and Ian David, who was with Elders, who was also a very talented cricketer, was fielding at short leg, and he picked up the ball and threw it straight back and knocked the stumps out, and Donald was 2 paces down the wicket. And Ken Bailey ran onto the field saying that was the most unsporting thing he'd ever seen in his life. He said the boy is obviously injured. So we let him resume his innings, and but what Ian David did was absolutely correct.
Yeah.
He ran him out. Donald played at the ball hit him on the pads, the ball ran to Ian David at short leg. Ian threw the stumps down. See you later.
Ken was looking after his nephew.
Ken didn't like that at all.
Yeah, right.
And another time playing against Port Neale, I dropped a caught and bowled against Bob Davey. It hit Bob's bat high on the bat, right up on the splice, and it dollied back to me, and I put my hands up to catch it, and it went straight through. It went straight through my hands and hit the ground. Brian Pryor walked from cover, and he said, "I've heard of people looking after their clients." He said, "But that was ridiculous." I say, "I'm sorry, Brian."
I don't think it would have been intentional.
No, it wasn't intentional.
You'd love to see the back of Bob Davey.
I did indeed, yes. Yes, he was a hard man to get out. But another time when I did have a success against Bob Davey, I got a ball to jag back, and it wrapped Bob right in front of the stumps on the pads below the knee roll. Everybody went up in appeal, the wicketkeeper, the slips and everything. And the umpire was a guy named Buck Winkle, a local fisherman. He said, "Not out." Oh gosh, we were stunned. Anyway, I walked back and I said to Buck, "Gee, it must have been close, Buck." And he said, "It was so close," he said, "if it hadn't hit him on the pads, it would have bowled him." Right, pass me the ball. I was bewildered. I didn't know quite how to handle that one.
It wouldn't have helped your mood much at all.
No. Yes. No. I was very pleased and proud to play with the Ramblers.
And the club's very happy to have had your services.
Yes.
Thanks very much, Doug.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Doug, he would have been probably the first or second year after Rambler started. He come to the district in his employment, and he played up until he left in about 1967. Doug won a male medal in the Port Lincoln Football League, so he was a multi-talented sportsman, cricket and football.
Played a bit of league footy for Sturt, didn't
Bit of league football with Sturt, around about the time that Roger Dunn was there, I think, and so and Doug was named in Ramblers Cricket Club best ever team. So yeah.
So was Butch one of the first also?
Yeah. Yep. No, he's one of the.
He was in that first founding.
One of the founding in that first year of the club.
So, all right, let's go to Ungara.
So, yeah. So Butch Fitzgerald, after he moved from Cockalichi farmland to the Butler Centre Road. Took up farming there. He would have played a lot of cricket here for the Ungara Cricket Club and also football for the Ungara Football Club on this very ground. So
Fullback.
Yeah, so there's 3 Tummy teams and 1 Lipson team. There used to be Port Neale, now playing the, well, it's not called Eastern Air anymore, is it? So Port Neale, they left the association in mid-90s, mid to late 90s. They were a big part of the association for, well,
long time.
50 years at least. Used to be known as Carrow, a bit like the football team. Become Port Neale. Other teams that we've had include Butler, Yellowknife Flat, which were basically colts. The colts.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Colts, Graham was a bit, it was all right.
What's Colts, Lipson? Or?
Nah, that was out at the race course.
So still at Tumby? Or?
Yeah, still in the Tumby.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Played out there.
So basically the history behind that is that they were called colts because there was a lot of juniors, but they were born out of Yellowknife Flat, but they decided to participate in the Tumby Association rather than Cummins. It's sort of halfway in between Cummins and Tumby anyway. And then, Yellowknife Flat sort of, the demographic, I suppose, of the player, they're probably more in Tumby, so they decided to change their name to Colts in about mid-60s. And they still draw some families from that region, but
They don't play
Yellowknife Flat went
anymore, obviously.
Yellowknife Flat, which name is Cockalichi, I suppose. They sort of went to Great Flinders. You started your cricket early days with the Cockalichi Cricket Club. That's true. And what can you tell me about those days?
I remember coming home from college. I was 15, Vin Pedler was 14, and a scratch team it was. Anybody who could play, and for opening bats, Vin and I were sent out to open the batting against Tom Marney from Mount Hope, who just clean bowled Badburn on the oval in Lincoln.
He did. He dismissed Don Brabham in 1939, if my memory serves me correct.
Yeah, and he didn't hurt us. He, good thinking.
Yep, he pulled his pace back a bit. Just
Not
for
going to hurt these boys. So we both enjoyed, got a few runs each, and that was the start of our teamwork there for Cockalichi. Cummins had one or two teams. Yelena had a good team.
Yes.
I got to know those guys, all farmers, all made many friends over those early days playing with them. And we took cricket. Of course, we're coming champions. We were doing so good. We're going to go.
And then, of course, the war come along, and so there was no cricket for 3 or 4 years. And after the war, you commenced playing with Ungara. What can you tell me about those early days?
Yeah. I will mention before, about a year before we went to Ungara playing against Lincoln team's Mark Fasey, who was the best leg back bowler I'd ever seen before or since. He had talent. And so then on to Ungara, I was 22 years old then.
And that came about by way of you moving or purchasing, or father purchasing farming land at Butler Tanks?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right. I started up there, a young raw recruit into a strange country.
Yep.
It was a sudden change away from the style of living, which was mostly sheep, to mostly manual labour, picking stone and working with a plant that wasn't all that well equipped for the job we're trying to do. I'd never seen any stonework on the ground before.
Yep.
And the paddock we started on was the stoniest on the farm, so you know the name we called the paddock. Stony paddock.
So, and of course, all the Fitzgerald, I think 5 Fitzgerald boys, including Butch, grew up here. And I think around about the late 50s maybe, there was not enough land for all the boys to farm, so Butch and two of his older brothers purchased some land in and around Butler Tanks, and three boys farmed there for up until they retired. Back then it was seen as probably the best farmland. Cockalichi actually probably too wet, but as we fast forward about 50 years, Cockalichi some of the best farming land on Eyre Peninsula. So, and Butch tells me that when he went to Butler, there was a lot of hard yards there with the very stony paddocks, and so it was quite marginal land in the end. But they forged a life and a living out of it.
Cool. And you got a bit of a personal history of the Fitzgeralds?
Yeah. Well, of course, I knew Butch, and he was our cricket club's president for a lot of years, Butch. And I played with his son David for many years for the Ramblers Cricket Club. And of course Butch, I don't remember it, I was probably too young, but Butch unfortunately was playing for Ramblers in a Ramblers Cricket Club in a pre-season game, and was struck by a cricket ball in the temple, and that had dramatic impact on his health in the way of speech impediment, or impairment I should say. He was flown to Adelaide. He was in Adelaide intensive care, and spent weeks over in Adelaide in hospital as part of his recovery. Had to learn how to speak again. Butch, not a great time for you. It's October 14th, 1973. You're 49 years old, and you're playing Charlton in a pre-season match at the Tummy Oval. Batting first, Ramblers are soon in trouble with 2 wickets down for 2 runs. You come out to bat, and after scoring just 5 runs, you were struck on the temple and fall to the ground. The blow to the side of the temple resulted in you being airlifted to the Royal Adelaide Hospital for emergency treatment and hospitalised for 10 days, after which a month followed spent in the outpatients with a speech therapist teaching you how to talk again. What are some of the memories you have of that day? Particularly, I remember you telling me you had to sit in the hospital up at Tummy Bay, waiting to be seen to, where you had almost a life-threatening injury, I suppose. So, what can you tell us about that?
Well, George Hanna and David and somebody else, possibly Dean Dane, took me up in the car to the hospital, and I remember them taking me in, and all sorts of groans were coming from me. I can recall that because I didn't know what was going on, but they got me inside, and the doctor was there and asked me various questions that I couldn't hear much, and couldn't understand it. They said, "Here's a pencil, write down the message," and I promptly dropped the pencil about 3 times. So they put it in my left hand, and I've never written in my left hand, but I write, "Peggy in shack, going home soon," and passed it to them. So they sent a message up to Peg at the shack, yeah. And so Chris was still a single girl then, and she was the nurse, and she said they'd stripped me, and she went over to the cupboard and said, "Butch, what is this?" My mouth wasn't working too good. Silly me, I know what it is. It was my box.
Oh, yeah, you brought your box to the hospital.
They put that on the
You
shelf.
didn't know what it was.
Yeah, so that's little memories are still there.
Yeah, that's great.
Chris, she's a great girl.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So a lot of rehab. You as I mentioned, you went to Adelaide and you spent a fair bit of time on there getting back on your feet. It affected long term your speech. And I remember you telling me that you might have played 1 year too long. Was that purely because this accident, or you thought that at the age of 49 you should have retired?
I should have retired, yeah. Less mobility.
Yep.
Sheer joy of being out with all the team.
Yep.
Kept me going there.
Now, David, I'll ask you this because you played in the same game. What was running through your head when your dad's taken to hospital and you're still playing the game?
Oh, it was frightening, because you end up, when that happened, I was still, and to replay it, whether it was like a beanball, and next thing you know, bang. And I know he's a competitor, and lying on the ground there, and it was, yeah, the heart gets going, and he's right with, I think I had Blue Falcon, took him down to the hospital, but you're living in the unknown, and when, as we've seen in recent years, you get hit in the head, and yeah, it certainly wasn't good for the next couple of months, that's for sure. And that day, I was, yeah, Dad's memory is certainly, as you've seen, is far better than most of us, and to relive that, but it was a shocking day, and it didn't put us off our cricket though. He fought on and still held positions after that. So
yeah, well, that's what I'll touch.
His recovery was.
When I was landed at the Adelaide Hospital, it took an hour, 2 hours to be accepted in there. And a little girl with a broken arm alongside of me, crying her heart out. And a doctor now and again came and listening to what he could hear. And only words he'd say, "You've got brain damage." Well, that was a lift upwards, different, isn't it?
Yeah, yep.
My brain is gone. God. I found out first, Trevor Chappell was admitted the same day. He got hit in the head fielding out on the Adelaide Oval. I knew nothing more of that other than reading it in the paper next day. He recovered okay, good on him.
So two good outcomes there.
Yeah.
Never sounded quite the same again, apparently.
Never is, yeah, as I say, very slow speech, but you know, there was no brain damage as such, more to do with his speech, but he stayed involved with the cricket club, president for a lot of years, the cricket umpiring, and but eventually the bug to play sport again was too much for him, and he took up bowls, and he played till he was well into his 90s, so yeah, he loved it. So.
Cool. All right, well, we'll just land this.
So, you know, after you, I think, several years at Ungara, and you obviously had a good career there, and then Ungara went into recess, or they may have, I think, by memory, joined Cummins League. So you then came across to play for Tumby Ramblers.
Yeah.
When the two clubs, Ramblers and Rovers, who were under the Tumby Bay Club, chose to form their own teams. So what can you tell me about those early days and some of the players that you started playing with the Ramblers Cricket Club?
Well, I was tossing the penny a little bit whether to join the Yellender Flat cricket team or Port Neal. I don't think I considered Lipton, but eventually I decided, family-wise, we had the shack here in Tumby, and most weekends, Peggy was in with the girls to play on the beach, and they became such close friends with the Schramm family, similar age. And so I said, I turned up cricket practice for Ramblers. I'm going to play for you guys. And they hung on.
How does it work with Tumby Cricket Club? Has
3 Tumby teams.
3 Tumby teams, but they're not sub-clubs or anything. I said to Craig that I thought it was one club, and under the umbrella you had 2, well I guess you got Colts as well, but the Ramblers, Rovers?
That was Rovers, Ramblers, that way back in the 30s, they had 2 teams, but it was under the Tumby Bay Cricket Club.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the early 60s that they decided to go on their own.
Oh, okay, so they are separate clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Rovers Ramblers were born out of the idea of we've got too many numbers for the Tumby Cricket Club, so what we'll do is 2 or 3 of the senior players will take the young ones on the wing, and they had 2 teams. And then both were quite successful, and then they decided that it's not working or we don't need to do it anymore, and they just formed Ramblers and Rovers, and that's why they had their 50-year reunion some time ago.
But this guy, are we going to read the names first or the stats? I'll keep it in suspense and I'll read the way we're going to do it. This guy has been the association statistician, which probably gives it away already, for the past 12 years. He's been the My Cricket administrator and coordinator for 15 years. He's been a club delegate for 18 years, an association player for 20 years. Henderson Shield B grade captain for 5 years, an association selector for 10 years. On the player side of things, he played 415 matches as the right-hand batsman, had one of the best sweep shots in the game, I thought, very hard to bowl to. He made 8,643 runs, he bowled medium pace, and with the runs he made 7 centuries and 42 half centuries. A medium pace bowler that took 184 wickets, held 161 catches. And on the statistical side, with his My Cricket and everything else, I mean, you've only got to visit Amanda and Stevie's house to have a look in the office, and it's fast resembling the State Library, I'll tell you. And he's absolutely meticulous in his arrangement of everything, and Christ, we are so lucky to have him with his research on history, and I love bringing him on the phone and having chats every week, and we can talk for an hour about bloody statistics and everything else the game's got to offer. But he's done a remarkable job, and it's my absolute pleasure to present the first live membership to Steve Milton.
I really enjoyed coming back and reconnecting with the Tumby Bay Cricket Association. I actually come back and played for Rovers for a year.
So I was going to ask you about that because you went and played for someone else.
So I come back from Darwin after a stint up there. So that was 2005 when I come back. I didn't know anybody. Ram was only sons of.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I played for Rovers, who had friends there, best mates. I just wanted to play cricket. I didn't want to be involved in running the club per se, or doing any administrative stuff. And so I just wanted to play and enjoy it with mates. And as I say, I didn't know too many people at Ramblers then. I played 1 year for Rovers when I come back. Didn't play the following year, and then I.
Oh, really? You didn't play at all?
Didn't play the following year, and then I come back and recommence with Ramblers.
What made you go back?
Oh, they really need a hand. I mean, I probably, in hindsight, probably should have come back and helped them straight off, but I didn't know what I was going to do and how long I'd play for. As it turned out, I got the bug again for cricket, but I did have that year off. But then I decided to come back because they were really struggling, and I saw myself probably getting involved off field as well, like financially they were struggling as well. On the field they weren't winning too many games. I mean, if I could help out in either on or off the field, well, that's what I'll try and do. And we were lucky, I think, probably the first year that I come back, we were lucky enough to win the premiership. So, and we were definitely underdogs. And
so a few others had the same idea about coming back? Or?
No, it's just we're the beneficiary of a few lads that were disgruntled with another team. They were young, they probably weren't getting to go, so they come across the Ramblers who really needed personnel.
Yeah.
And they were given the opportunity to bat bowl, whatever, because they needed the players. And they sort of, after a couple of seasons of struggling, they matured as players, and they were you know, some are still playing for the club now, and they've been, you know, great players for the club over many years. So
Who were those players? Yeah.
well, Nigel James,
Yes.
In the when was the first one we won? 07?
yeah, 07, 08, yep.
I still remember we smashed them in the Grandy, but the final to get in there, 9 down, they only needed 4 or 5 runs to get, and I may have dropped a cat right on the boundary. Was not the ideal timing, but
I think your head was on the chopping.
I think then Andy Allen. Maybe.
Andy Allen did take a catch.
Yep.
The very next ball to make me feel a lot better.
And obviously he's a great club man.
Yep. Josh Cave was another that come across to Ramblers and brought their family with them, basically, their support. His mum was Secretary Treasurer of the club for a lot of years. He turned out to be a really good player, scored centuries.
You know, it was probably, just a real lucky experience to have him. Very rewarding after probably 20 years of hard slog, to be fair. So, really good.
After a couple of seasons of qualifying for the double chance, only to bow out in straight sets, the Ramblers team tried a different tack in season 2014-15 by finishing third and therefore having to win a cutthroat preliminary final. And it had immediate results, with Ramblers defeating Colts in a match that they had no right to win.
I just remember us thinking that we weren't in the hunt for that hole, like we were sort of 50-50 winning at best. And momentum just sort of started building there through the finals, and we got there in the end, I guess, so yeah.
After winning the toss and electing to bat, Ramblers slumped to a seemingly hopeless position of 7 for 68. It took a club record 8th wicket stand of 110 between Jason Ainsbury, who got 67, and Brett Poole 37 to get back into the game and post a defendable score of 10 for 191. It hardly seemed enough, however, with Colts cruising at 3 for 145. A slowing of the run rate coupled with some poor running between wickets that resulted in 3 run-outs. Colts run out of overs, fell 5 runs shy of the required total. Paul completed a good all-round game with 2 for 42 from his 10 overs, along with Nigel James, who captured 3 wickets, including both openers. The grand final was an even bigger escape artist job, with all seam lost after being bundled out for just 188 after winning the toss and electing to bat. Only captain Josh Cave with 26 runs could stop the onslaught from Lipson youngster Lockie Gale, who took 7 for 15. Nevertheless, this Rambler outfit had some self-belief after them possibly brought about by the previous week's result, along with winning a couple of T20 titles. The past 2 seasons, after a relatively safe passage to a score of 1 for 27, Lipson wickets fell at an alarming rate, losing 9 wickets for a paltry 28 runs, with James 4 for 16 and new recruit Todd Baker 4 for 11 sharing the bowling honours. There may be a little story here to tell, something about premature celebrations from the opposition. You guys want to first talk about that preliminary final where we really shouldn't have won, and with Guz and Paulie keeping us in the game, and then going on to that grand final, posting 88, you just would give yourself no chance of winning that game. Nigel?
I can remember that the semi-final. I failed like normal in the finals. And just giving ourselves no chance, and watching Guz and Paulie put that partnership on, and actually thinking, well, maybe, at least we've got something to bowl to. But yeah, they're getting bowled out for 88, and then I can remember them getting runs early.
1 for 27.
And they were scoring them fast, and it was like, uh-oh. But as soon as we got 1 wicket, they were worried about losing 2 wickets rather than worrying about winning. So you could see the pressure built easily, and then all of a sudden, because they still were looking at that, batted 34 overs to make 55. It was a long, boring day. Lucky we got wickets in there. But yeah, the premature celebrations, well, why wouldn't you celebrate when you've got a team out for 88? Hope my name hasn't been thrown under the bus for any of that, because I reckon that was definitely not me who made 750 phone calls to another premises confirming whether the booking was still available.
I don't think any names were mentioned, were they, Roy? But Rig was pretty mindful of who might listen to this recording. So, Joe, what's your take on that year and that grand final and the semi-final the previous week?
Yeah, well, being a young lad in a team, we were full of seasoned campaigners. Being a few for not many early, with a couple of old fellas to come in to steady the ship was always good, because young people always like to take the game on, and in that semi-final with Guz and Paulie to come out to give us a decent total to bowl to, it really helped us obviously get to the grand final and then win it with. And that year and the next couple of years along, we had, our batting was sort of hit and miss, but we always backed our bowling team to get us out of the shit.
Yep.
And that was, like we said, we bowled tight and got a couple of early wickets, and then they just clamped up and didn't know where to go from there.
You know, obviously, look, I think we probably thought, genuinely that 88 wasn't going to be enough, but I just said to the guys, and all week I'd been talking to Todd at work, and I said, if we can get Geordie and get into them early, doesn't matter what we make, they can be prone to being a bit shaky, and I said set the scene by, like you said, Geordie and that Ben got off to a pretty good start, and I've been saying to Todd, I'll get Geordie caught at backward point, and then he finally drove it one a bit harder, and Todd caught him at backward point, and then we sort of swung the bowls around, and Jamesy and Todd just ran through them, and they probably panic just set in, and they capitulated really, started playing wild shots when they didn't really need to be fair, but at the end of the day, you make a score and sometimes you get lucky.
Well, I'd like to go back a bit further and probably set the scene in the preceding seasons when we'd been finishing top. Edna was captain, doing a great job, had a very young side. We had a lot of people that were sort of in the 18 to 22 bracket, which is not always where you play your best cricket. So we'd been getting there, but then we were choking in the finals. So I think it was disappointing for Damien that he decided not to be captain that year, because we were just on the cusp of obviously winning a few in a row. So there's that bit of backstory that I think is important. Then in that prelim final, I remember when Paulie went out to join Guz, the young team was pretty dejected about the whole scenario and thinking, we've got bundled out of the finals again here. And it was good that some senior players stood up and got us over the line, really. And I think, like you said in your intro, Steve, that built some serious belief within the group, and that we were good enough to compete at that level. And then on the day itself, I woke up and I walked outside and I thought, hell, it's sweaty. Like, it was just very muggy, which Tumby Bay normally isn't, and rocked up. Sure enough, the ball was just hooping around everywhere. And
it was like a real humid day.
Yeah, it was.
Just swinging around all over the shop.
They talked about it.
Yeah, I remember I was batting and Edna got out, and then Joey and me scratched around for bloody ages. And then you got out and Josh come out and he's just like, it's fucking swinging all over shop here. We're just going to have to go for it to make as many runs as we can before
I reckon because he played he played a scoop.
Yeah, well, that's what they said. Rig might have mentioned that he was playing ramp shot. He was just playing all these audacious shots because he knew that if he was just going to poke around, the next ball was going to have his name on it, the wicket. So
same thing, because I remember I was like scratching. I was like 20 overs for 12 and like leaving anything I could, like just to try and get through to stop it swinging. It just wouldn't stop swinging.
Yeah, and Lockie just bowling big hoopers.
Yeah, it was just all over the shop.
I was trying to heave one and got bowled.
Could have wrote that script.
Much won the match for us by realising it's just swinging around.
What's a game high 26?
Yeah, like
just stepping across to the off
10
and
runs here is going to be worth something. Like, and it's just fucking.
It was probably Josh Cave that worked out quicker than anyone that it was just impossible to bat sensibly and still retain your wicket. So he sort of innovated with a few ramp shots and stuff like that and got runs any way he could. And as it turned out, his 26 sort of was the defining innings. So
yeah, and the win itself for you would have been pretty special. I mean, you, like I say, just out of Colts, you'd won a junior Colts premiership, so that would have been pretty special to win a senior one. And you probably thought then, and that's the way it turned out, that this will be a normal occurrence, and it did over the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it happened to roll out all right. But yeah, and that's the thing. It was, mind you, we did use a lot of players throughout them years through weddings and buck shows and all that. There's always people missing and old fellas and juniors playing in to fill them spots. So
yep, well that's what Rig and Edna touched on, is that we didn't rely on just the same team to win those 5 premierships. Stuart missed a year with a knee injury. Edna had...
Joey missed a year with a headache.
Jason had retirements and then would come back. Nigel missed a pretty important final that we should have never won, and gave us the opportunity to get there, and he could play the following week. That was pretty important.
I didn't miss any grand finals. I didn't miss any parties.
Yeah. I think that night Tom Neindorf and Josh Cave were climbing up the chimney at the Tumby Bay Hotel so you could get up to the top. And they come out and they were black as black.
and so that's that year, and that was a pretty as I say, come from behind win like that to be bundled out for 88 and then get the opposition out for 55 is one for all ages. The following year didn't start well, with 3 consecutive losses before going on a 10-game winning streak. This included a 3rd straight T20 title, a form of the game that suited the aggressive nature of our players. It'd be fair to say that, the T20 format did suit us because we were attacking. Nigel at the top of the order, Edna was opening the batting. Stuart, when you were playing too, you had an aggressive mindset that you probably fed off Jamesy and Edna to a certain degree, and then you had Joe coming in to back that up. So that probably helped us in winning 4 T20 titles.
Yeah, I think T20 really suited our team. Obviously, like I said before, our bowling was fairly tight, and well field, well sort of. Yeah, we were fairly smart
for a few years.
About how we use that, and obviously our aggressive batting. If we got away, we got away big. And when
we failed poorly.
But still,
the batsmen failed. The bowlers
could back it up,
and we won heaps of games that we shouldn't have won, even throughout the year and whatever.
Without a doubt.
Yep. Once again, Colts were the opposition, this time in a qualifying final, that Ramblers dominated with a red-hot Nigel James and Damien Clark at the top of the order, belting the ball to all parts of the ground. Their explosive, albeit brief union, netted 62 runs for the first wicket off just 37 balls. It set the tone for the remainder of the innings, with skipper Joe Walker posting a game-high 80 runs and guiding his team to a well above par score of 9 for 238. Colts were never seriously in the game in their run chase, with the required run rate escalating to an improbable 7 runs per over at the halfway mark of the innings. They fell 46 runs short, and Ramblers qualified for another tilt at a premiership. Colts accounted for Rovers in the preliminary final and were determined to atone for their loss a fortnight earlier, and fill-in skipper Josh Cave called correctly at the coin toss. Ramblers elected to bat first. Prior to the start of this grand final, there was just as much drama off-field as there was on it, with Todd Baker nearly losing one of his fingers in a work accident during the week. But worse was to follow, with Captain Joe Walker being struck down on Friday prior to the grand final with debilitating migraines that saw him hospitalised and ruled out and taking any further part in the final. Joe, do you want to, we've touched on that before with Rig and Stuart, was a bit deflating. What were the emotions that you were feeling, knowing that you're probably not going to play in a grand final that we ultimately won?
Yeah, I'm sure the other lads have touched on it. It was disappointing. I wanted to, I think. I had a bit of stress building up to that week. I'd started a big job and at home and whatnot, and then I had a drop. I had someone from the team, which was there was 2 blokes, and both of them were reasonably good friends, and I think I'd just stressed myself out through the week to come, and I used to get them all the time as a kid, and just built up and just happened to be then, so yeah.
Edna and Rig both agreed that we don't tell Colts that you weren't playing, and more so that you were omitted from the team.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know anything of this happened. on the Friday, and Edna texted me. He said, "Meeting at my place. Got to work out a squad." And I thought, oh, well, it's either like it didn't worry me whether I got dropped or not. Like I was still going to be involved in it. I'll be there watching them. There's a toss up between me and Geordie Allen, who was going to be like left out. And in the end, like we both played, which was good for Geordie. Like he couldn't get his bloody medal out of his mouth at the pub. So yeah, it's quite good. Like you said, not having Joe, but Joe come down and booked himself out of hospital and come down and watch us win. So there's credit to him to come out and watch us. But yeah, it's a shame for Joe. But yeah, it's just credit like for Swaff and Todd Baker. Like Todd was probably a real good pickup in those couple of years that he was here and stuff. And yeah, and then we had an up and coming like Adam Brown and stuff like that. Like just starting to hit his straps and stuff like that, coming out of juniors. And yeah,
up until those years, we were building a really strong club culture, and that we wouldn't compromise our morals in dropping people that hadn't been to training and all that sort of stuff. So this whole situation with Geordie the night before and Joe going to hospital saved us a big headache, because Geordie had been a good contributor throughout the year, and we really didn't want to have to drop him. So yeah, so there was that. We certainly didn't tell Colts that Joe had a migraine. We said that we'd omitted him, so and pruned a bit of dead wood, even though he'd made 90% of our runs that year. But
I caught him off guard, and yeah, went from there. And I happened to come. I got myself out of hospital anyway, and sat in the car park and watched the last 15 overs or so. And yeah, it was.
And importantly, you're in the team photo.
Yeah.
It was an important move to drop you for someone that didn't bat or bowl.
Yeah, I think he was good in the field that day though, but anyway.
All right, so 16-17, we opened the season with 3 wins in a row, and it just happens to be all 2020 games, so we win our 4th T20 title in as many years. Joe, you scored 100 in this Big Bash series, and it's the first of the in the association, so that would have been I think come down to maybe the last ball when you got your 100, or second last ball or something like that. So that would have been a pretty exciting stuff for you.
Yeah, it was good. I was talking earlier to someone, it was just bizarre that everything you did just come off. Either there wasn't a fielder there, or you hit it well enough to.
That was back when we brought the outfield in too. That helped.
Oh yeah, fraction.
I think even I made 40 odd that day, so it must have been a good day. We must have made a heap.
As not a very powerful young lad.
But to win the 4 title, the Big Bash title, certainly gave us momentum in the 50 over game as well, and we probably gave us a feeling of great confidence that we're a team to be reckoned with. The season proper saw some mixed results for Ramblers, but they managed to finish second and play Lipson in the qualifying final, which we lost badly, by the way. We only made 113, they passed the score pretty easily. We rebounded nicely in the preliminary final against an emerging Rovers team, chasing down a victory target of 171 in very quick time. The win was set up by both James, 57 runs off 46 balls, and Clark, a run of ball 66. Their opening stand of 122 was enough to endure a mini batting collapse of 6 for 49, but the result was never really in doubt. I know sometimes, James, when you went out to bat, you didn't seem to have a plan at all, but obviously when you went out with Edna, there was obviously an intent to rattle the young Rovers bowlers and get them on the back foot from the word go, and make it easier for the middle and lower order batsmen to set a target that was going to be out of reach for the opposition.
Yeah, and that was always sort of the way I played, try and get a boundary or two away early off the bowlers, and then try and change how they want to bowl to you. And I can definitely remember that year, because they had a really young side, and as soon as you got a couple of boundaries away, they would start either bowling short, or you'd throw on your slow balls all the time and just get away from the line of length. And yeah, especially that day, we only hit 1 or 2 drives early, and then all of a sudden they changed how they were bowling and bowling short, and made it a lot easier anyway. I always get out when I block it, so
Attack is the go.
that's why I don't do it.
I think it's important to talk about the style of cricket that we've played along the way. It's probably always been in Rambler's nature to be fairly attacking, and through this period, I don't want to sound arrogant, but some of the cricket that we were playing, when it didn't work, it went bad, but when it did work, it was, I don't want to say unbeatable, but it nearly was. So, yeah, like making 198 in the grand final and having a red-hot dip, yeah, it sort of makes it hard for your opposition. So,
because I read, was it this 2015-16? I don't think we lost the game. Like you said, we had a poor start. Then we went into 2020 and we won that. I reckon, didn't we?
Yep.
Then I don't think we lost a 50-over game after. Yeah.
I think our overall style is to be aggressive.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, that was the era me and Nigel opened the batting and played our shots, and you know, it probably polar opposite to what Colt's nature was. They wanted to draw the game out and go deep. We were like, no, let's take the game to the bowlers and get after them. And to be honest, walking out to bat first, Jules Wade opening bowling was a win for us straight up. You know, me and James had taken Dane and Stoner down, you know, the 4 games prior, and you know, they just didn't have tried another tactic. And I mean, to Jules' credit, at least he tried something different and it didn't work. It's needless to say. But in saying that, you know, that we were still in a bit of trouble. But yeah, when they come out to bat, you know, same thing. We just stayed in the game and kept aggressive fields. And I think that's even going back to the previous win with 88. Same thing. If you're going to win, you got to stay, you know,
positive. Stay
positive and stay with aggressive fields, and then catches go to hand. If you spread the field, well, you're less likely to get wickets, is my opinion.
Yeah. Todd Warren,
Got to stay positive. If you're going to lose big.
Yep. The grand final win against Lympson in season 2016-17 was once again set up by an aggressive approach of the Ramblers opening batsmen. After restricting the Lympson first innings total to 129 all out, the opening pair of Richardson, Stewart type, and James attacked the normally economical Lympson bowlers from the start, piling on 72 runs in the first 15 overs before James, who once again scored runs when it mattered, fell for 44 off 45 balls. Richardson 26, Walker 24 and Ainsbury 21 runs guided Ramblers to another grand final victory, and in doing so matching the feats of a triple premiership team of the 70s. So bit of history there, 3 in a row. Joe, you back for this grand final. So to be captain of that would be pretty special after missing the previous year.
Yeah, that was an exciting year. Good performances through the year, obviously winning the 2020 again, and yeah, getting a few runs as well in the final always helps. Then going out to bowl, set aggressive fields and whatnot to get them on the back foot. So yeah, it was good.
Once again, 129, bit of a tricky score in a final. Once again, probably, you know, our attitude was let's go and get them, not drag it out all day and get the wobbles. So not letting them in the gate, basically. And we all know Nigel James's scoring ability. He probably sets the tone for where we're at, you know. Yeah, sometimes he gets 0, but sometimes he makes 44 or 45 and sets the game up for you. So, match winner. It was good for Joey to bounce back after missing the year before. And once again, I think we all agree that he's a quality cricketer. Probably will go down as one of the best that's ever played for our club, as far as I'm concerned. And
still young at this time too, like just starting to mature.
Yeah,
as a cricketer.
And we took that attitude, you know, years before that. Like, you know, when he was a junior, I'm like, he's batting at number 3 because that's where he'll bat. When he wasn't ready, but that's where he needs to bat to become ready. And I think that was, you know, part of the dark days is we were blooding a lot of blokes that probably weren't ready, but that was the risk once again, it's a risk, but it was a risk worth taking. And I think we could all see in him that we knew he would be good, and geez, he hadn't let us down.
No.
So,
and same thing again. Got ourselves off to a good start, and then got ourselves in a little trouble, and then an old head like Guz come in and make a 20.
Yep.
With a little bit of support of a couple of young lads, and yeah, it got us to a very defendable total.
Like, it's good to see like Stewie Richardson back that year after his knee recon.
Yep.
And on the Sunday after we won the grand final, the way that Stewie's just described his 60 hit off Bowser over mid wicket down on one knee, and I absolutely creamed it. Oh gee, that felt so nice. And I think that year we found a good wicketkeeper too, young Peter Hennell.
Yeah.
He comes straight out of juniors. Here's the gloves, like Edna said with Joe. He's batting number 3 in juniors. Here you go, mate. This is where you're going to bat. And that's, well, I've seen him open a couple of times and stuff like that, but number 3's Joe's spot. And like Edna said, he'll probably go down as an all-time great for Ramblers cricketers, well, he probably already is now, but yeah, but like John said, he's only young. What, how old's Joe?
27.
27, 26, 27. He's still got another 13, 14 years of good cricket left in him.
Yeah.
So I hope he sticks around and keeps Ramblers going. So.
Yep. The following season, and I don't have it in my notes here, but I think, James, you correct me if I'm wrong, this is the year in the 2020 Big Bash where you score an amazing 163 off only 58 balls. You want to touch on that innings? I know I was in Adelaide and I was watching the My Cricket app closely, and I thought I'd check the score, and I thought, no, that can't be right. I think Nigel's got 120 and it's only 8 overs bowled. That must be a bit of a malfunction on the app. So, but it was true, and you smashed them all to all parts that day, 11 or 12 sixes. And so what was going through your mind that day? You wanted to swing the bat, and if you got out, you could get in and have a beer early? Or?
Yeah, it was normally the theory, but something was on. It was Mitch's buck show. There was a buck show on, and there was no one here. And we had me and Justin opening, and then I think Brownie was number 3, and then after that,
Andy Allen and
we had all the ring-ins and
Bullet, and
we had no batting.
Scotty Richter probably.
And it was like, oh well, we actually had a countery and a pint before the game, and this is going to go one of 2 ways. We're either going to make a heap or we're going to make none. And it just, yeah, poor old Pinky kept trying to bowl at the top middle stump, and I think he did get me out, and he still to today brings that up. But he did go for 1 for 72 off his 4. He just kept trying to bowl at middle stump, and I kept trying to hit it, and to the rec centre. And that day it came off. But yeah, I did get dropped on 99. It was a very easy catch. I did get dropped on 99 to make it through to 100.
Oh, that don't count, man. Scratch it.
But no, it was that. Yeah, that was just an all-out attack innings. I just, for some reason they didn't change their ploy. They tried to bowl at the stumps and just got my eye in and kept hitting. And
it come off.
It was a bit of a sea breeze blowing like there always is at the town oval, and just kept carrying them over the boundary. So, yeah, it was good fun. Yeah, it'll never happen again. But yeah, you try and do it every week. You just can't. I try and do it every week, but you just can't. But no, it was,
one of the most obscene things I've ever seen. Down at Lincoln playing O-Grade Henderson Shield, and yeah, they made 305, I think. Anyway, me and Jamesy went to the Tasman for lunch and decided, well, 300's a fair score, so might as well have a couple of pints, eh? Anyway, we rattled through a few pints at the mid-break, and all the Lincoln professionals are sitting there looking at us, screwing their nose up. And anyway, Jamesy's come out and rattled off 180 and was out in like the 30th over. Absolutely unbelievable hitting. That was probably one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Just to recap the game, I think they made 2 for over 300, and at the halfway mark you broke for lunch at the one of the Lincoln hotels, I think they might have seen it as, oh well, you know, look at those guys over there, they're having a beer, you know, having a bit of a giggle, you know, this game is going to be over pretty quickly. And you mentioned having a bit of a frothy before you went out to bat. It obviously worked because we went back to Centenary Oval and began to dismantle the Lincoln bowlers, and we won, and we won very easily. You scored 130, if my memory serves me correct. That must have been a pretty, what's the word, an innings where you will shove it up these guys, and Tommy had a sensational win.
Yeah, they were, Smithy and Fricky made hundreds, and if anyone's going to make hundreds, it's going to rub you up the wrong way. It's going to be those two. Yeah, they batted very well that day and smashed us to all parts of the field. Got to 300, and I probably would have batted. I was probably in the team for the bowling that day, but then because they'd made 300, we were like, oh well, what's the worst that can happen? It's come off once before, so we'll try it again. And yeah, it got lucky again, and I can. Would we have a 160 run opening partnership, and Jules was on about 25 or something, so.
Something like that.
Your batting partnerships?
Your batting partnerships, but yeah, they brought this. I like to hit to cow corner, and they just left it free. They backed their bowlers and just let me have a go that day, and then I already got to 50 by the time they put someone out there and had the eye in by then, so they were landing on the road. But yeah, they tried spinners early and tried everything that day, but that was yeah. We obviously chasing 300. You got to go. It just never happens over here. Like we just don't bat deep enough in our orders. Like if we lose 1 or 2 wickets, like you've generally only got 1 or 2 top range batsmen, but we still had them to come that day, so that was good. I remember Pacer got 50. Someone else
Nick
got
Gale, I reckon, got a few.
Got a few, and we just
everybody chipped in, and
everyone chipped in and chased.
Wilkins 30 or 40. So yeah, that was the memorable. I know I wasn't at the game, but I certainly wish I was when
I remember, yeah, Guz wasn't playing, but he was driving trucks. He kept tooting, and he kept seeing me batting, so he knew I must have been on a heap.
I want to touch on the 2017-18 season where we win our 4th premiership in a row. But one game in particular stands out to me, and we talk about it early. And Nigel, you didn't play in the game. I think you were away in Adelaide. I think I was in Adelaide too, and we were keeping an eye on the score. You know, I think if it wasn't for Joe's 78, we wouldn't have got to. I think we made 10 for 149, and you know, we're probably thinking, oh well, you know, if we bowl well, we can defend that score. But when Lipson get to none for 75 in pretty quick time, I remember James commenting on you know, our Facebook page or messenger group that that's it, the run's over. We're going to lose this game, but then suddenly Lipson are reduced to 7 for 81 and then 8 for 107, and we appeared to be unbackable favourites. And then they had a bit of a last stand there with Brenton Stratford and Darryl Stratford, I believe. And then it come down to, I think, the last over, Stuart. They needed 6 to win. You get thrown the ball. You want to talk us through that?
I reckon I bowled 3 wides, straight up, and then thought, oh well, better aim it at the middle, and bowled a beamer, and Stratty hit it straight down Joe's throat at mid-wicket on the boundary, and he was out, and we won by 2 runs.
Yeah, and Stuart had been wicket keeping a bit through this period as well, so certainly wasn't a bowling option that we went to that regularly, was he?
No.
So
I remember it was it Fizzer made a few runs at the end, and I remember clearly Brownie dropping a catch, an absolute dolly at first slip.
Yeah, he did too.
When Fizzer come out, and Fizzer was on 1, and he should have been out, and the game should have been over. But yeah, I remember.
So another
hadn't bowled for the previous 3 or 4 years. And
I didn't believe it. I was in Adelaide and just refused to believe it, because it was.
So another game out here that's quite memorable for our cricket club is when we're in the middle of our 5 premierships in a row, and I wasn't actually attending the game. I was in Adelaide, and Nigel James, I think, he wasn't playing as well, and we were both keeping an eye on the scores on My Cricket, and I think we made 150, which was probably defendable. But Lipson got a fast start. They were about none for 80 odd, and then they had a collapse, and suddenly Ramblers become favourites. I think they have about, Lipson were then reduced to about 8 down for 90 odd, still needing 60 to win or something, and then they put on another partnership, and it looked like Lipson could steal the game from us. I think Joe Walker was the captain at the time, and he might have got his maths wrong, and he ran out of his top line bowler, so he had to throw the ball to part-time spinner Stuart Richardson. Last over, I think Lipson needed about 4 to win. Number 11 batsman Brenton Stratford hits the ball, a full toss from Stewie Richardson after he bowled a couple of wides. Bowled a full toss to him. He hit the ball well. I think it went out towards the Pavilion side of the ground, and I think it was Joe Walker himself was parked on the fence there, or on the boundary line, and took a catch to win the game. So that was again, we had to win to get in the grand final, and we went on to win the grand final. It was either our 4th or 5th premiership in a row. So that was
awesome.
An awesome match.
Stay there. Just going to check.
We must have stuffed up our...
I was captain that year, and
You got your maths wrong.
I'd cocked up my overs, and I'm just like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Stuart, you're going to have to bowl some darts, and it's either going.
As it turned out, it was a stroke of genius.
It was because the standard of the Ungarra Oval, like those run-ups there are just no good. Right, you can't bowl on those run-ups.
Nah, you're right.
Because we only just got in the finals that year. We had to beat Lipson in the last game.
That's right, yeah, because
that was the prelim.
Colts.
Yeah, but we had to beat Lipson.
We had to beat Lipson
to get into the finals.
Keep Colts out or something or other.
And that was the day that
we played at Ungarra.
And if we won, we were in. If we lost, Colts were into the finals.
Yeah,
right, was too.
And Colts rung the complex to see what the score was. And
someone's wedding or engagement party or something. So all the Colts boys were at this engagement party, and they rang the complex to see who'd won. Rick said, "Oh no, I got flogged. Bad luck." So they were all.
So I was at that party, and then Shane Pedmonte come up to me and had his chest out. And Richie came over and he goes, "How the hell did you boys lose, and why have you let Colts into the finals?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You guys lost today." It's like, no, Joey got like 60 and we chased it down 1 down. Like, we won. Yeah. Petters was devastated.
Last game of the minor round, that's right.
Yeah, it was too.
They were real short.
Because
I
reckon they only lost their game against Rovers by a couple of runs.
Yeah.
And we'd won by a couple of runs. So there was only 4 or 5 runs in a complete switch of the finals.
And for 4 hours, Colts thought that they were in the finals.
Yeah, we happened to string them along again.
Until we broke their hearts.
Anyway, it was a great win, and you get through to another grand final. You're aiming for 4 in a row. And it almost seemed like that was our grand final to win that game out at Ungarra, and
prelim, yeah.
And in the grand final, we're up against a young emerging Rover team, but against the experience of Ramblers, we just seemed to grow a leg after that win.
Rovers would have been favourites all year. They would have hardly lost a game all year.
Yep, we set them a total of 7 for 208. Stuart, you made 58. Adam Brown. A very valuable 47 in pretty quick time, I believe. And Jamesy, once again, finishing off at the end, 41 pretty quick runs. And although Rovers got to 2 for 99, they're well behind the over rate, and they capitulated in the end and fell 86 runs short. And we've won 4 in a row. So great achievement. Only 2 other teams have done that in history, and it was the most wins in a row by a Rambler team for sure. The following season, we're aiming for 5 in a row, a shot at history. We finished the minor round in 3rd position and fronted up against Rovers in another prelim final. After losing Captain Adam Brown for a duck, Joe Walker and Stuart Richardson both made half centuries, and other useful contributions came from Nigel again. With 27, that included 3 towering 6s in 1 over, and Josh Cave 29 runs. A total of 206 ensured Rovers would have to score at a reasonable rate to have any chance of victory, but it was not to be, and in fact at the halfway mark of their innings they had only scored 58 runs for the loss of 2 wickets. Jake Rogers takes the bowling honours with 4 for 26. Ramblers win by 95 runs and enter yet another grand final. Looking to rewrite the record books, Ramblers take on Lipson, and once again the Rambler bowlers give nothing away with some very tight bowling that restricts Lipson to just 8 for 127 after their 50 overs. In what was becoming a very common theme over the past 5 seasons, the Ramblers' opening batsmen get off to a flyer, in particular Captain Adam Brown, who is very severe on anything short, and he races to 43 before losing his wicket, just after the departure of fellow opener Richardson. Joe Walker and Josh Cave, however, keep the Lipson bowlers at bay with some stubborn resistance that carry the game well into the 42nd over, losing only Cave for 19, with Walker remaining 43 not out and Nigel James 7 not out to clinch a record-breaking 5th premiership in a row. So,
obviously it was something fairly special, not just for the players, for the club, and yeah, to get there, and obviously we come from 3rd again, to get there and get the job done as a dark horse was, yeah.
It's probably just on our experience that got us there, because
Rovers really.
And Lipson would have been favourites all year.
And we were notorious for not playing the full side pretty much until the end. There'd be that many weddings and whatever else on, and no one wouldn't actually get a full team and a run at it until near the end. So you just get into the finals enough, and then actually start playing half decent cricket with normally 1 or 2 weeks to go and lead into the finals.
I remember that grand final, Brownie come out and he was just tonking them everywhere. But that year leading up, I reckon he'd scratched together about 70 for the whole year. He was coming off about 3 out of 4 ducks or something, and I remember, I reckon it might have been you, Nige, like, well, if you're gonna get out anyway, you might as well at least put a couple over mid wicket on the pull shot, and he did. He just went out there and went bang bang, and then
And he batted very well, like played conventional cricket shots and
just a bit more aggressive mindset than
Well, he come out of juniors once again, and he was association equal leading wicket taker. So realistically, he was picked as a bowler, and you know, as time progressed, his bowling went to rubbish. So we were like, well, you're gonna have to do something else if you're going to be in the side. So he was. I think just become stronger. You know, he always had a reasonable technique. He just couldn't pierce the field, and got a little bit stronger and. Drank a few more beers, and he manned up, and was a quality batsman really by the end of his time with us.
I think what helped Brownie, he went wicket keeping, didn't he?
Yeah.
And like he had to keep concentrating and
watching the ball a bit.
Watching the ball. In the end, he started opening as well with Stewart, and I remember going out to Snake Pit there a couple of times to watch you guys. And I thought, Jesus, Brownie's in early. He opened. Him and Stu, they put on 100 and something. They both made 100s two times in a row when they went out there. Like Brownie just loved batting out there. So a bit different when you come in here though. But
and the same thing. We're only chasing a small total of 120 or 130 or something or whatever it was, and same thing. It got us well ahead of the run rate and put the pressure on the bowlers. And then even though we dragged it out to mid to late 40s in the overs,
there was no real pressure. You could just do it at run 1 and over.
If they bowled tight, you could just defend and wait for the bad balls. And like you said, our experience got us over the line again, really.
Yeah, sort of showed with everyone that other than Brownie sort of made 15 or 20 or whatever afterwards, like Josh and you and all our batsmen sort of fired it.
Took my tally to 2 career not outs.
Well done. Yeah.
All right.
So
I don't even remember that. Did you hit the winning runs? Or did I hit them?
I don't know. I must have, because you would have tried to hit it for 6 and got out.
Or I could have won it with a 6.
Well, I suppose.
Probably didn't really sink in that we'd won 5 in a row and how hard or whatever it was until the following season or later on, or after we'd lost the next year, because it had just become
3 a.m. at the pub.
It had become a fair bit of a habit for us as a core group, just like as long as we make the finals, we're going to give it a red hot crack, and just got to get to the finals, get your team through there, and then we'll be right. After reflecting on it, probably realising that there was, well, 1 year we very nearly didn't make the finals until that last day, last game, and then obviously win the prelim final in the last over another year, and well, first year we only made 88 and bowled them out for 55. Like, it's just
come from third a couple of times.
Yeah. So it's pretty hard work winning 5 games of normal cricket in the just home and away season in a row, let alone to have 5 grand finals in a row that you happen to fluke. Like, it's yeah, and I'm not saying it's due to being superstars or anything. I'm just saying it was a fucking real lucky period to have that happen. Like, and it's something very special to be a part of, for sure.
So these lads, we gave them the opportunity, and they repaid us in spades.
We'd fought back from being down to a B grade side to rally the troops with some work from too few probably at some stages. And
Edna and Rig both touched on and Jason, the great culture that you'd build up and the camaraderie, so that was pretty important to the success as well.
Trained well, and we always, Joe's mum Kathy cooked teas at training for a few years in the early days, and then we sort of took over and all took turns, and yeah, we'd regularly have 20 people for tea after training.
Yep.
Still be at training at midnight or whatever, so
built a real club culture, and
it was good.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things from this period that I'd like to bring up. One is that we didn't have the same side for it. We had a big turnover of players, and people that come in, we found a role from them, or we grabbed them from other teams that didn't want them or whatever. So that's one thing I think we did well. Another thing is our bowling outfit. We've talked about how attacking we were with both the ball and the bat, but we'd developed an awesome bowling attack that could go defensive, and we were just defending some scores. I mean, probably even starting back in 15-16 when we kept Colts to 176 off their 50 overs. And then the next year in the grand final, kept Lipson to 129 off 49 overs. And then same again in this one, Rovers batted 48 overs for 122. So we were really building a bowling unit that prided themselves on being able to go defensive when we needed to, tie things up, build pressure and defend scores that way as well. So.
I think it's you got to tread a fine line between winning games of cricket at all costs and keeping people involved and included.
100% agree.
And I think there's stages where when I was captain, we probably lost games that we could have won. I could have bowled myself or I could have bowled John, but I bowled someone else instead. Evident today, even in our 2020 that we played, I bowled a 14-year-old kid second last over. And you just got to take that risk sometimes. And so I think inclusivity and making sure everyone gets a go. It wasn't big early on in cricket world. I mean, when I first started playing with Stevie a long time ago, if you're a young fella filling in, that's what you did. You went from fine leg to fine leg. Me and Paulie cut our teeth on that, and we didn't get much of a go. Don't necessarily think that was right, and that's not the way I've presented my club since then. And I think that's a mistake a few other clubs have made in the journey. I know it's very hard. Everyone wants to win, but I don't think it could be at the cost of everything, because otherwise you end up with not enough numbers and not enough interest. So, all in all, I think everyone that's wanted to contribute and keen has always been welcomed to our club and felt included and part of it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think we maintained our integrity really well through that period. The club culture that we built from after that grand final in 2007, 2008 was really solid, I reckon. Probably started by KB Cave doing the teas after training, and that got everyone together. And then after she stopped doing it, Kathy did it. Kathy Walker did it. So big thanks to those two ladies. That was a big contribution to the club. And then the players got on so well and thought it was so important that we actually continued doing it afterwards with taking turns cooking. So that just drove a culture where people wanted to play cricket. They weren't just rocking up to go through the motions. They wanted to be there, and I think that was extremely important in the success that we had.
Oh, and no doubt all the other clubs are envious for what we'd achieved, and not just on the field, but you know, the backstory of, you know, our Thursday night teas. And
every club would have a character. I mean, there's might be some that spring to mind for you gentlemen that may not have been the greatest. I mean, I remember Peter Fry growing up. He was just keen to if we needed an 11th player, he would be it. You know, famously on group trips, he'd always be the first ones on them. He'd throw his pickled onions or his chilli, whatever he's put in a jar to the seagulls, and they would take a bite, and then they're diving into the water to put the fire out. And but every club's got a guy like that, haven't they?
Well, the one that we had too, I think, was that was really good for the clubs when we had our social events, was Leon Figgett.
Yes.
And
Squeeze box.
With his squeeze box. And he'd have the kids lined up in front of him, and they'd be all waiting for him to play. And
yes.
The longer the night went on, the better he played.
Yeah, you know? He was. And then when the B grade competition kicked in the mid '80s, Leon he wanted to be part of that. He captained, I think, the Rambler B grade team for a while, along with Bevan Butler, and
he was
just wanted to be involved in the club, didn't he?
Yeah, no, they were great fun.
Yeah.
I think that had a lot to do with belief that, you know, we were all pretty tight mates, realistically, and you always believe that, you know, I can throw the ball to John Richardson and he'll take care of it for me, you know, or Joe Walker will peel off 60, or, you know, Stewie will do something, James will do something. You just had no doubt.
Yeah. We just didn't rely on one person. Everybody, as soon as it come to a Saturday, everybody put in 100%.
But support, we've had some sponsors, Joe and Charmaine Cross at the Red Roof. We've had a long and checkered association with them, and various deals have been negotiated over far too many drinks, but that's been invaluable. Just really want to acknowledge that. Rip Nindorf, you go in there to get something for cricket, for the cricket club, and half the time you won't even book it down.
Yeah, it's never on the account.
Nah, it never is, so that's massive. And work like yourself, Steve, president, and doing all the stats and whatever, just putting in huge man hours. People like JJ McKay, no longer with us, but didn't miss too many games there of cricket, and it was building great culture as well. And Anthony Cave, he's here most weeks to watch us as well. So
yeah,
Tyler Hutton was the other one I was going to say. Yeah, but just never a working bee that he's not at. Yeah, OH&S goes out the window with the wood cutting, but yeah, apart from that, he's been.
But I think that stems to that inclusivity.
Yeah.
You know, like that stems back to Peter Fry, and you know, Stevie remembers him, and you know, like he didn't have any cricket potential at all.
Yeah.
But just it become family.
Deeply involved.
Keithy's obviously the same. You know, he's just happy to be involved, and because he feels welcome, you know, he's willing to stick around. And
yeah, that's just, and like your contribution, like the last how many years you've took over the presidency from me, which was good for our 50th year, so I didn't have to do any of that. So, and what you've done to the club since you've done that, Stevie, has just been immaculate. So, a big thank you to you. And I think there's a lot of, like Mark Cameron, he's probably thankful he's got you and Spud on his side too, I think. So yeah, it's a credit to all you blokes for the way that you guys run the association and stuff like that. It's pretty good, so yeah.
Okay. Kevin Sorrell, you come to...
How you going, Steve?
I'm good. You come to Tumby Bay in your employment in the State Bank.
Yes, that's right.
Was it during the football season or the cricket season?
I come at the end of a football season. I moved from Kangaroo Island, so yeah, it was just started the cricket season.
Right, and what influences were there for you to play for the Ramblers Cricket Club?
Well, I lived next door to Tom Tierney, so I didn't have much choice.
Well, that would do it. How did you come to choose the Ramblers Cricket Club?
I think Dean Dunn had a fair bit to do with it. I used to spend a bit of time in his establishment. Yeah, I think that was the main reason. Dean Dunn taught me into it.
Yep. Well, you're very lucky. You played in a three-peat for Ramblers, 3 premierships on the trot. What's some of the memories of those times, both on and off the field?
Oh, just the fact that we won. I'd never played much cricket. I think I'd played cricket for 2 years before I came to Tumby, and in a country town, if you didn't play sport, you weren't in it, and I enjoyed it. I played at Balaclava where I started playing cricket. I 1 year at Curramog and then 2 at Balaclava. Yep. Came here and started playing cricket, and I was getting a bit bored at one stage because we had such a good side. I was in at number 6. Well, as you can see by these, I'm the next man in and we've already won.
Yep, and quite often didn't get a bat.
That used to happen on Saturdays.
So much so that I think we were talking about it yesterday, that you might have complained to the captain and selectors that you probably would like more of a go, and so they promoted you up in the order and you went quite well, didn't you?
Well, I didn't really complain. I had a big whinge. I said to Cliffy, I said, I might as well go bloody fishing. I said, all I'm doing is chasing leather for someone else. I don't bowl because I can't bowl. And I'm number 6 and our blokes have already passed the score. So, you know, I might as well give up and go off, enjoy myself on Saturday afternoon. And anyway, I rocked up the next Saturday and he said, put the pads on. What? He opened the bat and he said, I'll teach you to complain. So I opened up and I think I got 40 something the first week. And I thought, well, this is all right. And then the next week we were playing Rovers, I reckon it was. Who did Lyle Swaffer play for?
Yes, Rovers.
And I reckon the first over or two, he was swinging the ball that much. I'd never opened up with a new ball against a new ball. I was trying to hit it, and after about 5 shots, I nicked one through his slips for 4. And Lyle rubbed his hands together and said, well done, you finally hit one. And I think he thought I wasn't going to last long, and after a while I got my eye in and got lucky and made 80 or something, 80 odd. So I thought, next week I'm going to make 100 here. This is easy. This opening bat, piece of cake. So playing against Leon Cameron was a bowler anyway, Lipson. First ball duck. Back to earth.
Back to reality.
Yeah.
But I noticed some of those finals you actually contributed very well with the bat, and even some of the grand finals you've made some scores there that helped the team over the line. So they must have been really special times, being from a non-cricket background to come to Tumby and have that success would have been, and particularly with a great bunch of guys to share in those premierships would have been fantastic.
Yeah, it was really good. I think the thing that stood out in my mind was, as I said to you before, was that preliminary one where we played Lipson and they made about 200 and we were 5 for 53. All our guns, Horace and Barney and Peter Anderson, they're all out. Thought, you know, we got no hope. And Dennis Chappell was in and he said, we can still do this, there's lots of overs left. He said, you just got to stay up your end, hold one end up. He said, I'll try and get the runs. Well, you know, I think I finished up about 20 something not out and he was 100 and something not out. We passed him. So that got us in the grand final where I never got a hit, but it didn't matter. We got there. So.
Yeah, that's it.
And then we won it.
Yep, and you helped get them there.
That was that's the biggest thing I did for the club in my book.
I can recall because I think I was 12th man in this game, and you come to training on the eve of the grand final and you've got your arm in the sling.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as you know, I was a state gymnast. That's why I didn't play cricket. I was tied up with gymnastics and diving for competitive stuff for a long time, till I got too old. But I still had the horizontal bar when I came here. And when I coached the footy side, I had the boys doing exercise on that, trying to get them fit pre-season. And anyway, it was pretty good apparatus to break arms and legs on that. It was very dangerous. Giant swings and all this sort of stuff. Well, I had a plaster there that someone had broken an arm on the horizontal bar and they'd taken the plaster off in one piece. So if you dampen it a bit, you could get your hand into it.
Yeah. So
I put my hand in it, and the last training night before the grand final, I walk up with this thing on Cliffy Carton. Oh no, what have you done? So I've broken my arm on the horizontal bar. Anyway, he was running around with his head down and grizzling. He's lost one of his players. And anyway, someone else would have probably done better to come in my place, but he wasn't very happy. And then so everyone's having a go in the nets. And I said, what about me? Aren't you going to let me have a bat? With a broken arm. I pulled it off. I said, now I'm right. He wasn't happy.
I think I was about the only one that, for a selfish point of view, might have been happy about it, because as I say, I was 12th man. I was only a young fella, but I was suddenly thinking, oh, I might get a game here. So.
If I'd have known how good you were going to be, they'd have put you in there anyway.
I don't think so. I was a bit young. I want to cast your mind back to November the 20th, 1982, Ramblers versus Ungara, with the temperature hovering around the 40-degree mark. Ungara bat first and posts a score of 5 for 211.
and in reply we are in deep trouble at 7 for 164, with just a handful of overs remaining. You come to the crease to partner Dennis Chappell, who is approaching a well-made half-century. You still require 48 runs to win. Dennis unleashes on the Ungara bowlers, hitting 9 sixes and 6 fours, and races to a century, and Ramblers reach the victory target with a couple of overs to spare. The then record 8-wicket partnership, which stood for over 30 years, realised 80 runs, of which you scored 8, Tom.
8?
8 runs. Can you tell us about that?
There you go. That's how you forget. I thought I scored about 20, but felt like it. I was there that long.
No, this is a different game.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Different game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Out at Ungara, very hot day.
Yeah. Well, I can remember a chap getting 100 because he was on 92, I reckon, and we didn't have many to go then. And I said, "Don't get out now, chap." What he did, this ball was right. I think it was Malcolm Fatchin or one of their bowlers. He had it right. I'm up the other end, and dead smack on the middle stump. And chap just did a big cross back swoosh and hit it for 6. If he'd have missed it, she was out.
Right.
And I walked down and I said, "Chap, don't get out now." So we only need about 10 runs, and we passed him. And yeah, he said, "I won't do that again." And I took him to 98, and next ball, same thing, back. He couldn't help himself. Another 6.
Yeah.
He was fantastic that day.
Yeah, and that's a record for a win for the ages. And tell me a bit about it. I've picked up his bat before, and it did not have a sweet spot. It was just, to me, just a piece of wood. Yeah. But Dennis, he hit in his career nearly 200 sixes. So just amazing. I mean, if he was using a bat they use today, for instance, just how many sixes he would have hit. But
he was a sensational hitter of the ball. I can remember on this oval here one day, and he landed one and smashed into Jimmy Darling's power box in the side of his house. So it's right out of the ground, over the road, and hit this power box.
That's when they had those big gum trees over the way too. Yeah. So he was.
He could smack a ball.
Yeah, he was an incredible cricketer. Wasn't a great wicket keeper and
very good wicket keeper.
Yeah. So. And so that leads me probably to my next question on just if you could talk about some of the best cricketers you played with or against in your time at the club.
Here or anywhere else? No, here, well, some pretty good bowlers. Kevin Sorrell was a good bowler and good bat. Horace Hartree was a good batsman and probably one of the smartest fielders I've ever seen. Dean Dunn, best spin bowler I'd ever played with. Peter Anderson was fairly handy bat, and heaps of others I haven't thought about this.
Yeah, I mean there's and you mentioned that you could hardly get a bat.
Well, Barney France, yeah, they're all very good bats.
Yeah,
the top guys in here, and Dave Fitzgerald's a good bowler, and some of the guys we played against, like Rodney Hurst, he could smack the ball around. I remember catching him up. He hit a ball at me at gully there one day. I was coming that hard. I just put my hand up and it stuck somehow. And he said, "How the hell did you catch that?" But hell, he could hit a ball. Yeah. And the Davey boys, Ross Davey, he was really good.
Bob, of course.
Cameron boys, they were good.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good cricketers. Old Chaffee.
It was a pretty strong era, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that makes those wins all the more memorable.
Chaffee, wait. Who am I looking at here?
Ungara had good players.
Childs, he was.
Dean Childs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there was a lot of good opposition players then, as well as the ones we had.
What about some of the off-field antics that the Ramblers Cricket Club used to get up to? I mean, as a young fella growing up, the group trips were legendary, and I always wished that I could be part of them, but of course I was too young, and by the time that I was of the age to drink, they were just about phasing them out. So can you touch on those adventures across to the Sir Joseph Banks groups of islands?
Well, the premierships were good, but they only ran a poor second to the Ramblers cricket trips. Like they were legendary here. It's a pity they don't still do it these days, really, because we'd have 25 to 35 blokes out there. They'd go out on a Friday night. It was usually when the Colts cricket carnival was on towards the end of the year.
Okay.
Before the finals.
Before the finals.
And it was a break for all the A-grade teams. So Ramblers had this tradition of going out there. They used to get ferried out by Turfy Carr and his cutter and Rexy Milton and his boat. I always went with Rexy usually because we were good mates, your father. And we fished a hell of a lot together. But they'd take out 2 18-gallon kegs and a temperite. They'd bury the kegs in the sand and put wet bags over them, run it through an ice temperite box, and they had a 44-gallon drum with a big a can of oil that they'd deep fry all their scallops and fish, and blokes like Ozzy and myself and Peter Allen, some of the younger guys, younger than me,
yeah,
they'd all go and dive for scallops and oysters, and guys would all go out in their boats during the day and catch fish, or we'd have a slap up.
Yeah, so you're making me feel envious now, but you touched on the kegs being buried in the sand. Now there's a bit of a, whether we call it a myth or not, but about a keg being buried in the sand and then they could never find it. That's true?
That's true. Yeah. There's one of them we couldn't, like, the tide came, high night tide came in, and it was really high, and some of the guys, and it was Bob Carr and Butch, I think Butch Fitzgerald might have been with him, or could have been Roo Carr, but Bob was one of them. They had blow-up mattresses inside a tent, and they wake up during the night, they go and relieve, and Butch, or whichever one it was, stepped off his mattress. They were floating. The tide had come right up through their tent, and both their beds were floating inside the tent. Oh, some of the things I got there, I could write a book, I reckon, on.
Yeah, and you have.
yeah, well, that was on fishing.
Just on fishing, but a little bit about the group strip in there as well. Tiger snakes?
Yeah, I did an overnighter this last week out there with a couple of lads from a cattle station. John Dyer's son-in-law and his son, and there's still lots of death adders out there and black tigers, but they never worry much on the beach, although one night on a Ramblers trip I'd gone down the beach for a walk and it was moonlight and I could see this black thing on the white sand there, and I looked at it and it moved and I thought, hell, and I yelled out, snake, and Dean Dunn and Beetle Bray come rushing down. When Beetle picked up an old rusty iron dropper that someone had left out, probably part of an old fence out there, and he proceeded to dong this poor tiger snake and killed it. And Dean picked it up by the tail, and its nerves are still going, it's still wriggling. He brought it back and he dropped, because the boys are all sitting around the fire on their pieces of sawn sugar gum for seats. And he dropped it in there in the light, and it was still wriggling well. You'd never seen
they scattered.
Scatter.
Yeah.
Dean Dunn, he was a bit of a character.
Yeah. Well, he had the name of Death Adder Dunn, and I'm not sure how that come about.
Yeah. Well, it would be to do with all the death adders out there. There's still hundreds of them out there.
Yeah, the population has certainly grown over the years. They've been untouched. There was also another incident out there, which I'm not sure were you on this trip or not, but it was the local copper at the time by the name of George Hanna, who might have accidentally stepped on some hot coals. And he was in all sorts of pain, and they had to race him back to the Tummy Bay Hospital. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, you've basically covered it, but I was there.
Yep.
And he'd imbibed a bit too much, I guess you did on those trips.
Yep.
And yeah, he finished up with pretty burnt feet. There was a few other blokes that had close shaves that nearly fell in the fires a few nights.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun out there.
I remember just as a kid on the Tummy Bay jetty waiting for the return of my father, and I would see some of the drunken lads that would come back. Some of them looked very ill. They might have got a bit of seasickness, or a combination of seasickness and too much to drink. So
yeah.
Obviously they had a great time over there, and
there was lots
it's part of a cricket tradition for Ramblers and legendary. I mean, we don't do it anymore, but even the young fellas talk about those group trips, and one day they might be started up again.
Yeah, they'd blow, like Leon Feger would take his squeeze box out there and play music around the fire, and one day there, Butch Fitzgerald is well known as our cricket club, and him and Bob Carr had a little boat called the Heather, and they'd had a bit to drink, and they went out around the corner to Lusby Rocks and dropped the anchor, and they caught a few nice fish, and they came back, and someone had put a 44-gallon drum in the water about 20 yards out from the beach, and there was about that much, or 6 inches of the drum sitting out the top. Well, Bob Carr grabbed Butch, stood him up on top of this drum, all he was in was his jocks. He's holding the last remains of their bottle of whiskey that they drank, and he recited this poetry. And all the guys on the beach would just kill themselves laughing. So that was some of the things that used to happen out there.
Yeah.
You could tell story after story after story out there.
Obviously great times. Yeah, well, that's probably pretty much it, Derek. That was good.
We got it, fantastic, brilliant.
You come at a time when Ramblers were just off the back of a very successful period. They'd won 3 premierships in a row, but I think the first season that you come here, we didn't even make the finals.
No, but I had a reasonable year myself, played with some pretty good cricketers still, but yeah, we weren't quite up to the mark that year. But
Yep, I think we lost the services of Dennis Chappell and Cliff Carpenter as well, which didn't help matters.
Horace Hartree might have been a...
Yes,
Yep.
He left as well, so we're in the rebuilding stage, but yeah, you did have a very good season. You made 533 runs and took 20 wickets. And then the next year, we picked up Cliff and Dennis were back in the fold, and we actually made the final, the grand final against Rovers, but it didn't pan out too well.
Yeah, the people that were most supposed to make the runs, like me, didn't make them, and we're all rolled out for 33, wasn't it?
33 it was. It was the lowest score.
Roberts and Mick Heath steamrolled us.
They did.
One got 5 and one got 4 wickets.
That's right, and I think I was run out. But we had a good social side to the club, and I think we enjoyed the night nevertheless around at Neil David's place.
Yeah.
And I think we were well past the time that Rovers end up getting to bed, so we actually enjoyed win, loss or draw.
I had some great social times with the Ramblers Cricket Club. I remember when I first got here, first game I played was up at Port Neal, and I think I made a few runs that day, and we were invited back to Roger Dunn's like you quite often were for a party. And my wife and Marion and I went around there, and we had 2 little kids, about 4 and 6, and we enjoyed a great barbecue. Anyway, the kids got sent off to bed somewhere, and about 5 o'clock in the morning we thought we'd better go home and get some sleep ourselves, and we got told we were pikers because we didn't stay for breakfast.
They were big parties back in the day. But yeah, it was a disappointing grand final loss, but once again, personally, you had a very good season. You were an all-rounder, and even though not a great year with a bat, you're still second in the batting, but you're bowling with 43 wickets at 9.7. That was...
yeah, I had a good year with the ball that year, so seemed to go in cycles. I'd have a good year with the bat one year, then the bowl, and probably the year after I had a good year with the bat again.
You certainly did. 81-82, you topped the association batting aggregate with 770 runs at the healthy average of 42.8. And once again, you know, you're in the mix with the wickets with 24. So personally for you, a great season. I think you would have been fairly high up in the all-rounder that year for the association as well. I can't quite remember. But once again, a disappointing grand final loss.
Yeah, again, the person that was supposed to make the runs didn't make them. And
that game was against Lipson, wasn't it?
Lipson. They looking through the records last night, and I think they were all out for 159, and we fell short by about 8 runs.
Yeah, that was. I played in that game. It was quite disappointing, and we several times we looked like we were going to win the game, but we, as you say, just fell short.
I think Tom Tierney and might have been, not sure who was in with him.
Maybe Dennis Chappell, Cliff Carpenter.
The last 2 had a real crack at it with a couple of overs to go, but yeah, we just fell short.
Just fell short, so another loss, and you know, you were lucky you left the following year, but I had to endure 2 more losses, so we lost 4 on the trot. But just getting back to...
I did have the pleasure that night. We ended up at a party at
Stephen Gardner.
Stephen Gardner's old man's place.
Wenty.
Yep. And of course Lipson had the shield already, but I grabbed a wheel hub off the shed wall and I presented it to Nipper Harriff.
Who was the opposition captain, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so it was disappointing, but once again, you know, we had a very good social side to the club, and win, lose or draw, we celebrated. And that sort of leads me into some of the times that we had in the groups trips.
Yeah.
Some recollections of those?
All right. I remember when we used to have a Ramblers cricket show, it wasn't only the players that were there, we had a lot of past members that would always turn up. Butch Fitzgerald, Leon Figgett, your dad, who wasn't a cricketer, they're all there and helping us, having a good time. So yeah, we had some really good times with the Rambler Cricket Club.
Somebody had to look after you when you were over on an island.
On the groups, yeah, that was, we had some good trips there. First year I went there, and I was told it was cabaret night on the Saturday night. Only trouble was I peaked a bit early and got stuck in it on the Friday night. And so next morning I was a bit crook, and I went out fishing with Roger Dunn and Hammy on his boat.
Yes.
Because you remember Hammy's old cutter, it rocks and rolls a bit. So I ended up providing the burley. They sent me down to the boat, and still rocking and rolling, but I could hear them catching all these fish and throwing them in the well. So they had a good day, but it was thanks to my burley. So.
You suffered a bit.
And that night was the night I reckon the tiger snake appeared as well.
Ooh, Tom Tierney just spoke about that, and I think Beetle Bray might have put an end to the poor.
Yeah, well, it came down out of the sandhills during the day, and they said, "Oh, leave it alone." So it went back up in the sandhills, but when it came down at night, having a look at the fire, it was decided to dispatch it. Dunn had a good laugh at me because I was sleeping in his tent, and he had an old army tent that had the ties on the front.
Yep.
There was no way I was going to sleep in that night, so I found a tent with a zip front in it. And he was having a real go at me the next day. So.
Yeah, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah.
There's another fishing story. I don't think it was a group trip, but you went, as you said, my old man, he had a good fishing vessel, and he liked to take some of the newer people to town out fishing, and particularly Rambler cricketers, or footballers for that matter. And you had an experience one day, and I just want to clear up whether this is fact or not.
Yeah.
But I'm told that you're out fishing there, and there's a movement in the boat, and Dad knew exactly what was going on, and you were saying, "Rexy, what's happening? The boat's moving," and he said, "Don't worry, Butch, it's just a whale getting the barnacles off its back." Is that a true story?
Well, it is. There was a whale out there, and it went under the boat, and whether it actually rubbed its barnacles on the bottom, I'm not sure, but he said he kept looking at it to make sure it didn't, because he thought it might disturb it. But yes, we definitely did see a whale go under the boat.
Yeah, well, he did have a power head just as a backup. Yeah, so that's a good story. And moving on to some of the better cricketers that you played with and against. I mean, we'll probably start with the Ramblers Cricket Club and so.
All right, yeah. Well, I played with yourself. Played with Dennis Chappell, Cliffy Carpenter, Horace Hartree, all good cricketers. Ian Wakefield was here at the time, good fast bowlers. David Fitzgerald was our captain, very good leg spinner, and took a lot of wickets for Ramblers, yeah.
Yep.
So some very good cricketers.
Yeah. And some opposition players?
Opposition. I said about my first game at Port Neal. I remember going up there, and I said I made a few runs that day. Then there was a bloke named Bob Davies still playing cricket. He was well into his 50s, and he came out to bat, and I was bowling to him. The first ball went over my head about 150 kilometres an hour, straight up the goal square for 4 runs. So I think he ended up making 70 in very quick time. So obviously he had been a very good cricketer.
Yes, he was indeed.
Yeah. Played against, what was the Hurst?
Rodney
Hurst, he was a very good cricketer, hard hitter.
Yep.
Dean Childs, who we had a chat here last night, very hard hitter as well.
Great all-rounders.
Great all-rounders, yeah, very good cricketers. And our Rovers, of course, had Doug Murphy, was still bowling off spin and still making runs. So yeah, it was, although there was only 6 teams in our association, there was still a very strong association and very good cricketers around.
Yep. Good. Just to round out, Butch, you 10 years ago, the Ramblers Cricket Club had their 50-year reunion, and you were honoured by being selected in their team of the half century. That must have been a proud moment for you.
Oh, I was totally taken. I couldn't believe that I'd achieved that, and that was one of my greatest honours in my sporting career, which I played cricket for well over 30 years and about 18 years of senior footy, and that is going to live long in my memory. So I'm very proud of that achievement.
You were here a short time, but you obviously, you made an impression on the club with your ability, and being in the bank, you probably back in the day 3 years in one place and then you moved on.
I had 3 years here, and yeah, that was a usual stay, 2 or 3 years wherever I moved.
So you probably, I mean, one of the benefits of that is that you get to meet people and make lifelong friends. But on the flip side of it, you're never going to be selected in various teams. So to be,
I don't think I'll ever get a life membership. I never stayed in one place long enough, but I played a lot of sport moving around, and as you say, meet a lot of people. Like these days, I told you last night I play the old man's sport of bowls, but I go to the Bowls Country Carnival in Adelaide, and all these people come across that I used to play football and cricket against.
Yeah.
And you can go and have a chat to them about what we used to do in our younger day. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, that's the benefit of moving and living in so many different country areas. It's fantastic. Yeah. Thanks, boys. That's probably about it.
All right, Steve. Well, thanks for the opportunity.
You too. That's good.